Good morning, everybody. This morning, I'm going to take some time to talk about living life in the overflow. And we're going to talk about really what the secret to fulfillment is. And kind of before I really get off into this, I just want to take a second to read Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, and my cup overflows. Surely goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So when we look at that scripture right there, many of you in here would be able to recite that verse from memory. And when you think about all of the famous scriptures that are out there, this is probably one of the most common, one of the most loved, one of the most cherished verses for many reasons. What a beautiful picture of who God is and what his love looks like for us. And I think all of us would say, yes, God's love and his mercy will follow me all the days of my life. But my question for us this morning is we are walking out in the world, as we're going through the malls, as we're at our job at work, as we're sitting at home with our families, what does the overflow of our life look like? Do people see us as someone who is receiving the blessing of the Lord and everything is good and, man, we have this peace and this joy and our life represents that? Or does it look like we're walking through the valley of the shadow of death with absolutely no hope in our life? And I want to look at this picture and figure out exactly what we need to do to represent the first part I talked about. Showing that God's love is in me, letting my life be a representation of the hope that I have in Jesus. And I want to start out by looking here. We're talking about something. So when we're looking at fulfillment, in fact, this day and age, for all my fellow millennials, everybody is focused on purpose. Right? What's my purpose? What in life is my identity? Where am I going to find fulfillment? And, I think we look for fulfillment in all of the wrong places, quite honestly. My life will be fulfilled if I get that promotion at work or I get that job that I really want to have. Or for all of my single teen challenge students, my life will be fulfilled if I get married. Right? And that's the big thing. That's going to complete my life if I get married, right? I know that was one of the big deals when I was a student in the program at Teen Challenge. If only God would give me a wife, then I would just have everything that I could ever need, right? And Natalie, if you're watching at home, I love you. Thank you for everything you bring to my life. You're amazing. Or what about if I had X amount of dollars in my bank account? My life would be perfect as long as I had this amount of money. And there's so many things in life that we try to find fulfillment in, but yet we always find that we're lacking. And today, I want to focus on somebody's life. And honestly, this was brought to my attention about 5 years ago as my grandpa gave me a book called Living on the Ragged Edge by Chuck Swindoll. Some of you may have read this book before. Some of you maybe don't even know who Chuck Swindoll is anymore. That's totally cool. But I read this book, and this book brought me through the entire book of Ecclesiastes, basically just breaking it down word for word. And as I began going through this book of Ecclesiastes, it is by far my favorite book in Scripture today. Some of you are like, Ecclesiastes? Where in the world is that? It's pretty awesome. I took a chance just with Natalie and Josiah to go back through all 12 chapters of it. Literally doesn't take very long to go through it if you're just sitting down as a family. But there's just some awesome things that Solomon describes throughout the entirety of this book as he's really searching for meaning in life. And today I want to focus in on Solomon's life with you for a little bit here. So I'm just going to start in Ecclesiastes chapter 1. The words of the teacher, son of David, king in Jerusalem. Meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher, utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. What does man gain from all his labor at which he toils under the sun? Generations come and generations go, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun sets and hurries back to where it rises. The wind blows to the south and turns to the north. Round and round it goes, ever returning on its course. All streams flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full. To the place the streams come from, there they return again. All things are wearisome, more than one can say. The eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ear its fill of hearing. What has been will be again, and what has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which one can say, look, this is something new? It was here already long ago. It was here before our time. There is no remembrance of men of old, and even those who are yet to come will not be remembered by those who follow. I, the teacher, was king over Israel in Jerusalem. I devoted myself to study and explore by wisdom all that is done under heaven. What a heavy burden God has laid on men. I have seen all the things that are done under the sun. All of them are meaningless, a chasing after the wind. What is twisted cannot be straightened, and what is lacking cannot be counted. What a heavy way to start the morning. Holy buckets. And honestly, if you know who Solomon is and you read these words, you go, that perception of life should not come from this man. I mean, let's be honest. Everything that we tried to build our lives to be, Solomon possessed. And I want to go into some of the details of everything that describes Solomon, all of his splendor, all of his riches, all of his wisdom, everything that he had. Like, we can say he was the wisest man in the world. We can say that he was the richest man in the world at his time. And those are really general statements. But I want to take you into some specifics of this man who just said everything is utterly meaningless. Let me tell you some attributes of his life. So first off, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream, and he offered Solomon anything that he wanted at all. And Solomon did a pretty wise thing. He said, Lord, just give me wisdom. And the Lord saw that, and he's like, man, what a pure thing to ask for. Not only am I going to give you wisdom, but hey, you could have asked for riches, you could have asked for a long life, but you know what? Since you didn't ask for those things, I'm going to give them to you anyway. And so the Lord blesses his life with wisdom, riches, and a long life. You see, Solomon had more wealth and honor than any other king during his lifetime. Let's look at some of the specifics there. First off, he ruled from the Euphrates River to the land of the Philistines and as far as the border of Egypt. His daily provisions were this: 187.2 bushels of fine flour, 374.4 bushels of meal, 10 head of stall-fed cattle, 20 head of pasture-fed cattle, 100 sheep and goats, as well as deer, gazelles, roebucks, and choice fowl. You talk about a meal that can be prepared with all of those animals, and we're talking this is his daily provision. As they're sitting down and they're making a meal, they're going hard. You know what I mean? Like, they're putting Christmas, Thanksgiving, every holiday that we have to shame every single day with the amount of food they're able to put together. And yet the dude is still finding there's nothing meaningful in life. You see, he reigned in peace for about 39 years. 39 years he was on the throne. I believe David ruled for about 40 years himself. The whole time David ruled, he was at war, constantly trying to build the kingdom. Solomon got to inherit a kingdom that was at peace and didn't go to war during his lifetime. He had 4,000 stalls for chariot horses and 12,000 horses. He was wiser than any other man on earth, and men of all nations came to listen to him. The list of everything that he had, I could continue to go on and on, but the main point is, though, even though he had everything, by the end of his life, he saw it all as meaningless. So maybe looking at all of this and everything that Solomon had, you might be going, all right, Michael, I get it. He had everything, but honestly, that seems pretty unrelatable to me, right? I couldn't sit down with my family at home and eat one cow each day, much less have 30 different cows prepared at a table and have these big parties and all of this going on. That just seems pretty far out there for me. So what I love is that Solomon and Ecclesiastes made it simple for people like me who can't even begin to fathom what to do with all the provisions that he had. And so we're going to take off here and we're going to pick back up in Ecclesiastes 1, verses 16 and 18. I thought to myself, look, I have grown and increased in wisdom more than anyone who has ruled over Jerusalem before me. I have experienced much wisdom and knowledge. Then I applied myself to the understanding of wisdom and also of madness and folly, but I learned that this too is a chasing after the wind. For with much wisdom comes much sorrow, the more knowledge, the more grief. So at first glance, we look at wisdom, and I think if we were all to be honest with ourselves, wisdom's a pretty good thing to have, right? In fact, Solomon goes to say wisdom is much better than folly, but nonetheless, the more wisdom, the more grief. Well, why is that? Why does grief and sorrow come with wisdom and knowledge? See, the problem with wisdom is revealed in verse 16. I thought to myself. I thought to myself. You see, when we're pursuing wisdom and our life is completely centered around gaining wisdom, gaining knowledge, we're looking within ourselves, right? And we're having this conversation. I spoke to myself, and this is what I was able to come up with. It puts me at the center of my life. But it gets revealed even deeper in this. Verse 13 went on to say, I devoted myself to study and explore by wisdom all that is done under heaven. You see, not only does the pursuit of wisdom and knowledge and centering our life on those two things put a focus on ourselves, but it also keeps our focus here on this earth. It keeps us focused on the things that are just simply around us. And I don't know if you guys still watch the news. I kind of gave up on that a little while ago. Honestly, if you sit down and you watch the news today and you can walk away from your television set like with any sort of happiness in your life at all, I'm amazed. Every time I watch the TV, honestly, I just get angry, and it's a little depressing as you look at the state of the world and everything that's going on all around us here in our home or even all across the world. Like when we set our mind on earthly things, it is going to do nothing but cause us grief and sorrow and break our heart because our focus is here on this earth. You see, when we get to the New Testament, Paul begins to write to us in a brand new way, and he begins to show us where we should set our mind and where we should set our thoughts. Colossians 3, 1 and 2 says this, Since then you have been raised with Christ, set your hearts on the things above, where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God. Set your mind on the things above, not on earthly things. You see, wisdom can be a really good thing, but it is not intended to be something that we depend on. We are not supposed to depend on ourselves. My life isn't supposed to be about me. My focus and my mindset shouldn't be on the things of this world. Instead, I should begin to spend more time focusing on God, who He is, what He has done for me in my life, what He is doing for me today, and what He is going to do in the future. I should be setting my heart on Him, spending time intentionally to get outside of myself, to get outside of this world, and to just be with Him. That's where we should be setting our attention. That's where we should be focused, and that's what Paul is alluding to. But when we build our life around wisdom and knowledge, and that is the main pursuit of our life, it keeps us from being able to experience that because it's on us and the world, and it's not on Him. We'll continue on in Ecclesiastes 2. See, I thought in my heart, come now, I will test you with pleasure to find out what is good. But that also proved to be meaningless. Laughter, I said, is foolish. And what does pleasure accomplish? I tried cheering myself with wine and embracing folly, my mind still guiding me with wisdom. I wanted to see what was worthwhile for men to do under heaven during the few days of their life. So here's the deal. I think we can look at this section that we're about to talk about, and this one makes sense, right? Building your life off of pleasure, I think, is pretty easy to agree with. All right, yeah, probably shouldn't do that. And for most of you in this room, you've probably heard me share my testimony. Maybe you heard it from somebody else, but before God saved my life 6 years ago, my life was completely consumed by addiction. And every single day of my life was in pursuit of getting high and finding pleasure and trying to numb out all of the pain that was ultimately going on inside of my heart. You see, when we look at pleasure and our main pursuit in life being pleasure, usually we're running to those things that make us laugh, those things that cheer us up, those things that can give us just that little temporary bit of joy that, man, I really want to taste. And when we make our life's pursuit about finding joy, we find that inevitably we are stuffing down our emotions. Ultimately, we're numbing out, we're tapping out, we're trying not to face everything that's really going on inside of us. We're not being honest with ourselves, and we're trying to overcompensate for what's really going on. You see, let's see if I can find myself here. See, pleasure certainly isn't limited to addiction. There are many other things in life we can run to numb out. Laughter is a huge one that Solomon alludes to. You ever be that guy who just always has to turn something into a joke and you can never have a serious moment in your life? I've been that guy. Still am that guy from time to time. I like to have fun. I like to joke around. But when our life is only about joking and laughing, I think Robin Williams is an excellent example. A guy who was so depressed, ended up committing suicide, but was one of the funniest guys that we ever watched on television. Always had a joke, always something to laugh about, but ultimately was covering up what was really going on inside of him. Or how about television? Oh boy. The God of entertainment. How much time do we spend as a couch potato staring at a TV screen? Man, whether it's movies, whether it's binge watching your favorite show on Netflix or Amazon Prime or whatever you're streaming, Disney Plus, if that's your cup of tea, right? Whatever you're spending hours and hours and hours in front of the television doing, and dare I say sports. I know I promised myself we wouldn't talk about this. Spending hours each Sunday watching NFL games, and I'm getting more and more convicted the more and more I talk about it, because guess what? I love watching the Minnesota Vikings no matter how much they break my heart, no matter how much it ultimately destroys me. You know, I get those few good moments like on Saturday night or Friday night when the Iowa Hawkeyes absolutely crushed the USC Trojans. We got a few cheers in there. For a little while, I think that I'm like the only Hawkeye fan around here with all the Cyclone people that just consume this body. But you know what? The Hawkeyes came through on national television when everybody said they're just a bunch of Midwestern kids. They can't compete with the kids from California. They're slower. They ain't as tough, blah, blah, blah. We came and punched them in the mouth. That felt really good. I can't, it gives me little moments like that. But honestly, with my teams being the Hawkeyes and the Vikings, I've found many more years of like, okay, this is really, really average. And we're not really terrible, but man, we've never really made it. And so that's usually what watching hours and hours of sports does for me, is it just disappoints me time and time again. But anyway, the time that we spend in front of the television, always having to be entertained, always having to have that noise going on around, always having to have that distraction that keeps us in a different reality instead of focusing on what's right in front of us. Or how about this one? This one's really fun because we got Thanksgiving and Christmas not too far in the rear view, and we got New Year's resolutions just in front of us. Food. Food can be a huge pleasure. Where you're sitting there and you're at Thanksgiving dinner and you're putting 3 pieces of ham, 3 pieces of turkey. You get 5 rolls with extra butter on each of them. The green bean casserole, the corn casserole, the mashed potatoes. You got everything. And you can't just have one plate because, come on, it's Thanksgiving. We got to go for a second. And then after that, what do you have? You got your pie. And we just keep eating and eating and eating. And for those of you who are like me, there's something just so satisfying about that post-Thanksgiving meal nap, sitting on the couch, where you got the Detroit Lions playing on the TV, but nobody really cares. You're all just napping and getting over the food coma that you just put your body through. But that pleasure we find from eating food. I can't tell you, as a Teen Challenge student 6 years ago, when I was sitting down on our Sunday night meal. It's called Sunday night snack, but sometimes it can turn into a nightmare. I'm telling you right now, I learned just how little self-control I had in my life when we got to leftovers on Sunday night and we got food from every single meal that we had that week. Just like Thanksgiving, you can't just try one thing. You got to try everything all over again. And next thing you know, before you know it, you got 3 plates of food down your belly. 1 full plate of those was desserts, and you feel like trash. Some of you relate with me here this morning. I'm here to tell you I found pleasure in food, but food can be just as misleading as TV or laughter or addictions or any other thing in life. We can use it to stuff our emotions, and you guys ever have emotional eating where, man, my life is really down right now, but a cheeseburger would just make things so much better. I don't know. I like cheeseburgers. Maybe you don't. But pleasure, searching after pleasure. So the pursuit of pleasure not only is a cover-up for pain, but really it's an attempt, our own human attempt, at trying to experience joy. See, John 15, 9 through 11, made the experience of joy really, really simple. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will remain in my love, just as I kept my Father's commands and remain in his love. I have told you this so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. Oh, that's all it takes. If I keep God's commands, his joy will be in me and my joy will be made complete. So what about my circumstances? What about everything that's going on in my life around me? I love that it's so simple that there's no little clause underneath. If this happens in your life, then this isn't true. If you're walking through that really hard family situation, then this doesn't really apply. If this is going on, this cancels it all out. That's not what it says. If you keep my commands, obedience. See, if we're walking in relationship with the Lord, we're living in his commands, it doesn't matter what's going on in life around us. Like we talked about in Psalm 23 at the beginning, the valley of the shadow of death is a promise. We're all going to walk through it. Just because we're Christians doesn't mean that life is going to be perfect all the time. In fact, I think becoming a Christian made my life harder in many aspects, because all of a sudden in life, instead of bowing down in the face of every adversity, I have to pursue God and walk through it, keeping my eyes on him, and face all of the hurt and all of the pain and all of the struggle and everything that's coming at me. I'm walking through it now. You see, before I was with the Lord, everything just defeated me all the time. I'd run from adversity. But being a Christian, we're taught to walk through it, keeping our eyes on the Lord. And I'm telling you right now that can be really hard. But it doesn't matter what our circumstances are. It doesn't matter if we find ourselves walking through the valley of the shadow of death. Psalms 23 promises what? He is with me. His rod and his staff, they comfort me. He's watching over me. My cup overflows. Goodness and mercy are following me all the days of my life. Even in the valley of the shadow of death, we don't have to fear. We don't have to let it consume us. We don't have to bow to it. We continue to walk through it. And we can find so much joy in the middle of that. In fact, quite often, if you're looking through the Bible and you want to talk about joy, it would be pretty hard to find a topic about joy that doesn't include suffering or trials right next to it. It's pretty backwards from the way we like to see it in the world. We wish joy would just be everything being perfect all the time, constantly, just mountaintop experiences, flying on the clouds. Everything is great all the time. That's not the promise. The promise is we can have joy even in the middle of that, and we don't have to allow the world or the circumstances or what the person doing next to me is doing. I can have joy no matter what's going on around me. That's constant, and it's something that we can have no matter what. Continuing in verse 4. So I undertook great projects. I built houses for myself and planted vineyards. I made gardens and parks and planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made reservoirs to water groves of flourishing trees. And we'll stop right there. And so if you haven't put two and two together here, there's going to be a lot of people who aren't happy about this one. We're going to be talking about work. And I'm telling you right now that work can be one of the greatest distractions in the world. Because guess what? It's something that we all have to do. But the reality is they produce a lot of good things, right? They give us financial resources to be able to provide for our families. That's a good thing, right? They give us a sense of purpose, right? They give us a sense of accomplishment, a sense of self-worth. You know, I didn't really work hardly a day in my life before I got saved by the Lord. And I remember the first time that I put like a honest, hard day's work into a day. And I was like, man, that felt pretty good, right? Some of you are probably laughing like, what, this guy never worked before? Yeah, seriously, when I did that first job and I worked my tail off to get it done, it felt really good to be able to put my head down on the pillow that night knowing what I did. And so, although work is necessary, and as noted in one of my favorite scriptures of all time, in 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, verse 10, we'll sum it up like this: don't work, don't eat. Paul makes it pretty clear. You got to work. You can't just sit down on the couch and expect God to magically put finances in your bank account and everything's going to be okay. We got to work. But what we can't do is let work become our life. You see, there's a lot of really bad things that come on our life when we begin to overwork ourselves. So, what can work get in the way of? Well, number one, it can be a really easy way for us to escape our emotions or, escape reality. If you're sitting there and you're just going out and you're working 80 hours a week and you're focused on the next task and the next project and the next job that needs to get done, doesn't leave you a whole lot of time to think about all the hardship that's going on back at your home. Doesn't leave you a whole lot of time to realize how that person hurt you yesterday. If I can just keep plugging away and keep working and working and working, I never have to face anything. And you know what? It's good because I need to work and it needs to happen. But it can easily be a distraction and an escape mechanism to really avoid everything that's really going on. Or how about this? It can really get in the way of relationships. How many times has work gotten in the way of you being able to be present at one of your kids' sporting events? How many times has work gotten in the way of being able to schedule that date with your wife? I meticulously made sure Josiah didn't feel good last night, so Natalie couldn't be sitting down in the chair to listen to that one, right? So that way because obviously if she's not here, that doesn't make me accountable to it, right? Yeah, she's watching. Hi, Natalie. I'm accountable to this, I promise. So it's funny, sometimes, you get up here and you realize how much of this is really for yourself and what God's doing to minister to you and change my heart as I'm giving a message. But how often can we overload our life with work to the point where we forget to work on the very relationships that we have waiting for us at home because we spend too much time at work and not enough time with the people that we love? So more importantly, has work become a greater priority than God in your life? You see, we schedule our entire week around our job. What time we wake up, what time we go to bed. For me, it depends on what time I have to clock in the next day, right? If I don't have to clock in the next day, I can stay up a little later. But man, if I have the 6 to 2 shift and I'm waking up an hour earlier, then guess what? I'm probably going to go to bed an hour earlier. Like, work defines my time schedule. And so if I am so detailed and organized with my time, building it around work, how much of my time am I intentionally spending around getting alone with the Lord and spending time with Him? Is my time with God just as important to me as my schedule at work? Because guess what? We're not going to be late to work, but man, I woke up a little late this morning, and so I'm not going to read my Bible today because I got to rush out the door. Or I got 3 things to do: 1, shower; 2, eat; 3, do devotions. And well, I can't go to work if I don't eat and I don't get showered, so I'm going to do those two, but now I don't have time for devotions. And so that gets the time with God ends up being the thing that we throw out, and we get to work on time, and that's more important. We have all of these things that we make more important. We need to make sure that our time with God is the most important thing to us. And if that means waking up an hour earlier to be able to make sure that we get that time with Him before we go through our day. Because I don't know about you guys, but if I ever go out my front door and I go try to work and I go try to be in relationship with people, it is near impossible for me to live everything that God's called me to do in life if I'm not inviting Him into that first part of my day. I can get along without eating breakfast. I can get along without taking a shower. You guys might not like that too much, but I'll live, right? But my time with God has to be the most important thing to me because if I don't spend time with Him, then I'm never going to have everything, all the blessings in my life that are going to follow when I'm focused on Him, attentive on Him, reliant upon Him. When I'm dependent and reliant upon myself, bad things happen. But when I'm dependent and reliant upon Him, it doesn't matter what stands in my way. I'm going to be able to get it done because He's the one who's leading, not me. It's His strength, not my own. Amen. So, obviously, I'm not suggesting to quit work and sit down in your house and do nothing. But what I'm saying is, are we pursuing more earthly things that we want by overworking ourselves? Really, God's going to be our provider. He's going to take care of us no matter what. Yeah, we got to work, but do we need to work as much as we are? For those of us who work like 80 hours a week, I don't work 80 hours a week, but I know many people who do. When you're working 80 hours a week, why are you doing all that? Is there time that you can be spending at home with your family? Is there time that, do you need that extra money to be able to go on vacation or to get that car or to get this house payment that you really need to make? Are we trying to build our life off of other things that maybe we really don't need and sacrificing some things that are really important because of it? I think it's really good that we take an honest look at what's become most important to us. So Paul says this in Philippians 4:10 through 13. I rejoice greatly in the Lord that at last you renewed your concern for me. Indeed, you were concerned, but you had no opportunity to show it. I am not saying this because I am in need, for I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living or in plenty or in want. I can do all this through Him who gives me strength. I think this is probably one of the most misused scriptures in all of the Bible sometimes because we can go at it and say, you know what, I can do anything I want, because Christ is going to give me strength. My favorite is you got Steph Curry, who it's pretty awesome that he recognizes God in everything he does. He's got, I can do all things, written on his shoes. It's a pretty cool testimony. But really, this situation isn't talking about getting things done or things you can accomplish. This is talking about whether you are living in need and have a lot, or whether you're living in want and not really having enough. You can be content and get through anything because Christ is going to give you strength to be able to make it, no matter if you have everything in the world or whether you don't have anything at all. He's going to be your provider. He's going to take care of you. You don't need to go and overwork yourself and cause yourself to be away from your family and do all this and that. He wants to be able to be your provider. Yeah, we got to work and we have a part to play in this, but God wants to be a priority over your work. Ecclesiastes 2:7 through 9. We're going to talk about money because that's real fun. So I think if we're all honest with ourselves, there's been a point in each of our lives that we have wished we could have enough money to be able to do whatever we wanted. And if there was ever a man who was qualified to be able to speak about money, I believe Solomon would be your guy. 1 Kings 10:14 and 15. The weight of gold that Solomon received yearly was 666 talents. If anybody else is weirded out by it being 666, I'm right there with you. 666 talents of gold, not including the revenues from merchants and traders from all the Arabian kings and the governors of the territories. Let me put this into perspective for you. Annually, he was getting 666 talents of gold. Okay, 1 gram of gold today costs about $38. Okay, so one talent is equal to 33 kilograms. That would make 1 talent equal to $1,400,116.57. So if you multiply that by 666, if you multiply that by what he got annually, he got $932,477,636. And to make it real fun, if you multiply that out by 39 years in just gold, Solomon received $36,366,627,789.18. That's just in gold. I can't tell you how hard it was for me to come up with that number doing math. That is not my strong suit. It was really hard, and I'm really proud to have that here to be able to share with you. Thank you. So, if we were able to add in the rest of his assets, I'm sure he'd be right up there with the richest people of today. The richest person in the world is the guy who owns Amazon, and he's worth $113 billion. I'm sure you add in all of Solomon's properties, all of his animals, all of his everything that he owned, I'm sure he'd be right up there in total net worth. So let's make it a little more practical. So I think we could look at $1 million as like, if I get $1 million, I can live a pretty comfortable life. I think I could be set. Like, that's a goal. We call it life-changing money, and I think all of us would love to be able to see $1 million inside of our bank account, right? Here's the problem. That's 900 times less than Solomon earned each year. Each year, he earned 900 times more than that. But yet, when we look at the subject of money, he says, I amassed silver and gold for myself and the treasure of kings and provinces. I acquired men and women singers and a harem as well, the delights of the heart of man. I became greater by far than anyone in Jerusalem before me. And all this, my wisdom stayed with me. Even then, it was meaningless. Man, if I worked my entire life to become a millionaire, and Solomon had over 900 million every single year of his life, and he wasn't satisfied with that, what makes me think that I'm going to be satisfied if I just get $1 million, if I get 1/900th of what he got? Man, if he had 900 more times than that, I'm telling you, there's nothing that any amount of money is ever going to be able to create. It's not going to fulfill me. I'm not going to be satisfied. There's always going to be something missing. You know, the moral of the story is money is not the key to our happiness. In fact, the late Biggie Smalls once said, "Mo money, mo problems." Seriously, it's not going to give you what you need. It's not going to make you happy. It's not going to complete you. I don't care what number you think is going to magically change your life. If you think money is going to give you happiness, stop. It ain't going to do it for you. It's not going to do it. So having a lot of money is not a bad thing, but when amassing money becomes the very thing our life is centered around, we will learn, just like Solomon, this is totally meaningless. So what's the purpose? Where do we find our fulfillment? What's this all about? What do we need to base our life on? Ecclesiastes 12, verse 13. Now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. Fear God and keep his commandments. So what does that look like? In life, it's good to gain wisdom, experience pleasure, work hard, earn money, and all of the other aspects that make up our life. But when any of these things consume us and become the center of our life, we will find out the same way as Solomon that everything under the sun is utterly meaningless. The two things in life we must focus on: fearing God and keeping his commandments. Fearing God is not cowering in fear of what he could do to me like some bully at the playground. It's not what the fear of God is. Fearing God is making him our first and greatest priority in life. See, if God is my first and greatest priority, he will give me all the wisdom that I need. If God is my first and greatest priority, he will give me true joy, and I will be able to experience it to the full. If God is my first and greatest priority, he will bless my work and everything that I put my hands to. If God is my first and greatest priority, He will make sure that I never go without. He will take care of us financially. Doesn't mean he's going to make us the richest person in the world and give you all of the prosperity your heart ever wanted. But you're never going to go without. He'll take care of your need. And you take care of your needs and you won't have to worry about it. Keeping his commandments. Our obedience is very important. John 14:23 and 24 makes this very clear. Jesus replied, "Anyone who loves me will obey my teaching. My Father will love them, and we will come to them and make our home with them. Anyone who does not love me will not obey my teaching." These words you hear are not my own. They belong to the Father who sent me. See, we cannot just simply say we love Jesus and then go on to live our life doing whatever it is that we want. That's not what the Bible calls us to. That's not what Jesus calls us to. That's not what this life is about. When I do things my way and I'm pursuing my own dreams and I'm doing everything my way with my wisdom and my abilities and everything that I have, I'm going to find life is totally meaningless. I'm going to be beating my head against a brick wall and feel like I can never move forward in life. But when I find myself being obedient to Jesus, truly loving him, to understand that God doesn't want me to be obedient to him so I can be like his little puppet and be his slave and make my life totally miserable, stripping me of everything good in life. That's not what obedience gives us. You see, Jesus loves us enough to call us to obedience because he knows that he can provide the full measure of everything our hearts desire, but it only comes through relationship with him. It's not something that we can produce in and of ourselves because he didn't design us that way. Sorry. He wants to be in relationship with you. He wants to know you. He wants to be here for you. He wants to supply you with everything that you need. And he needs our obedience to be able to do that because he wants to be the source of everything here on this world. Not because he wants to strip you away of everything, but because he wants to fill you with even more than you could ever do for yourself. So, I appreciate you guys giving me the chance to talk at you here this morning. I pray that this is eye-opening for all of us as we look at, the different areas of our life that, we've taken into our own control, the things that we're trying to do on our own. And when we're looking to have that life overflowing, when we're looking at walking through the mall and somebody sees you and it's like, man, why does he have so much joy? Man, I just seen Russ walking through that really hard thing in his life, but man, he has so much peace. And being able to see everything that people be able to see our lives and know everything isn't perfect, but yet, man, we're steady and we have a smile on our face. And God's love, his mercy, his favor, his blessing is all over our life. For that to be the testimony just through the way that we walk every single day, that's the overflow. That's the overflowing of God's life. And that's where we're going to find true fulfillment. Not what this world can offer us, but what Jesus has already given to us. And when we stay in that and we're truly able to walk in that, man, that doesn't just make our life a whole lot better, but man, it sheds hope to everybody who sees us around us. And man, they're going to begin to desire the same thing. So Father, I come to you this morning and I just thank you so much that you are where we can find all of our fulfillment. I thank you so much for the relationship that you desire to have with us, that you want to know us intimately, that you want to be the source for everything good inside of our life. God, I pray that any area of our lives here this morning that we have taken into our control, God, that you would just bring that to our attention and that you would teach us to be able to submit all things to you and that we would be able to find everything we need inside of you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Yeah. I'm really thankful that we have someone that's called to teach our youth that isn't just about making jokes or having a fun time with our teenagers. I'm thankful that we have a man of God that God has called to teach our youth about him. I love that. And so thank you, Michael, for bringing that word today. I love that it lines up. You know, I joke with my wife, I was like, there's so many jokes you could talk about 2020. But when we talk about 2020 vision, a lot of the times when we want to hear God's vision, we want to see God's vision, some things need to be removed from our eyes. Just like in our physical bodies, when you want good vision, sometimes the doctors have to go in and remove something or fix something or do something. to give you that vision. And sometimes that's what we're talking about here is we need to look into our life and say, Lord, what's in the way of me seeing your vision? What is getting in the way? What is it? Is it my job? Is it the TV? Is it whatever, my hobbies or my budget? Whatever it is, God, what's getting in the way of me seeing the way you see? The way me seeing my wife or my children or my relationships the way you see them. The way me seeing, the way I need to see the job that you've given me the way you see it. The opportunities that are in front of me the way you see them. Sometimes we need to take time to remove those things and say, Lord, I'm sorry for letting those get in the way. Lord, I'm sorry for becoming distracted. And so I love the word that Michael brought to us this morning. We just thank you for coming this morning. We love that you came together to worship after probably a pretty crazy week. And I hope that you continue to take time to center your life on Him as we come into the new year. That's what we want to do, is if we continue as a church to say, Lord, our resolution is you. Our resolution is growing in my relationship with you. My resolution this year is to be in a place that I've never been in my relationship with you. I want to become closer. I want to spend more time with you. That's my resolution, Lord. So again, we had a lot of announcements. Please sign up if you're interested in baptism or just want to hear information or ask some questions about it. Please come and talk to me afterwards. We'd love to walk into that with you. And then again, if men and women, if you want to sign up for the activities coming up, the bowling nights, please do that. And also write down or get on and make sure you put on your calendar the dates of the remodel project. So we love you. Have a great week, COA.